coming this morning to hear about the reading program. I'm Natalie Lacatina. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Education.
And good morning, everyone. I'm Kelly D. I'm the principal here at Lynn Crest School.
I recognize many faces from last year's presentation, so thank you again for coming back. I'd like to thank Mr. Norcia for being here with us this morning. And Dr. Cohen, also a board member, is here joining us this morning as well. So last year, as many of you know, we undertook a huge project in which we revised and updated and expanded our REACH program, which is for our academically talented students here in Fairlawn in the elementary schools. And so we're going to briefly today just review some of what we shared with you last year, and then really spend most of the time talking about the details of the program. Because as we said, we were going to come back and let you know about some of those details once we worked them all out at the end of last year and over the summer. So once again, just to remind you, this is the National Association of Gifted Children, and this is their definition of what a gifted individual, what that means. And so you can see that gifted individuals are those people that show outstanding levels of aptitude or competence in a particular area. It's not always across the board. And we see that with children, that sometimes a student just has this uncanny ability in math or reading or science or the arts. So often we will see that. Children may be really advanced but just have particular talents in some individual places. And again, gifted individuals are really the top 1% or rarer. It is a very small percentage of students that typically display, and individuals, adults as well, that display this gifted behaviors. Here in Fairlawn, we're really happy to say we address the needs of all of our learners, and we address many accelerated learners, much higher percentages than 1%. And you'll see that the way that we have tiered our program, we actually address the needs of all of our learners in different ways. So as we explained last year, we use a tiered system. So there are 4 different types of services that we provide to children. And again, just as a reminder, last year, Mrs. D and I went to the National Association of Gifted Children's conference, and it was fabulous. We learned so much. And over and over and over again, we saw this approach where there are tiered opportunities for students, and that it's important for all children to be exposed to enrichment activities. So type 1 services, as we spoke about last year, that's when all students are exposed to a very rigorous curriculum. We differentiate to meet their needs, whether their needs are that they're struggling or that they are more advanced. And we also do whole class enrichment. This is also known as talent development, where we're helping all of our students gain important skills so that later on they can hopefully have that foundation of skills that they need to go into some of the other types of programs that we have. Type 2 services are for many of our students, as opposed to Type 1, which is for all of our students. Type 2 services are when our enrichment specialists work with our classroom teachers to help differentiate even further. So let's take the expertise of our enrichment specialists, have them collaborate with our classroom teachers, and come up with a plan for individual students to meet those very specific needs. In that area, we also have self-select programs in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade for students that say, hey, you know what, I'm really motivated and I want to participate in something. I have an interest somewhere and I want to be part of a special program. So that is another kind of Type 2 service that we have. Type 3 services, now you have a smaller group of children. This is services for some children. These are the students that are actually identified in a variety of ways. We'll talk about that in a little while. Those are students that Type 1 service, great, Type 2, fabulous, but we're just not meeting their needs. They need something even more special. Those are our pull-out programs that we provide for all students in grades K through 5. And then finally, Type 4 services. That's for very few students, and those are the children that are so significantly above the grade level that we have to come up with something very personalized for that child to make sure we give him or her what is needed. So the first thing we're going to do is walk you through the details now on each of these services, and we're going to start with Type 1.
So our first Type 1 service for our students in K through 2, which is brand new this year, we're very excited about the PETS program, which is our primary education thinking skills program. It's a curriculum that we follow. Right now we started with our first graders. They received this in the first trimester. Basically, our enrichment specialist is pushing into the classroom and offering the class these lessons. So we started out with Dudley the Detective. It's all taught through characters so that the children can make a connection when they're doing a type of thinking to a specific character. So we started off with Dudley the Detective, who's a convergent thinker. He uses everything around him to draw conclusions and come up with one right answer. So the students are doing that type of thinking, and now we just moved into Isabel the Inventor, who's very different from Dudley because she's a divergent thinker. And so she sees something and she thinks of multiple ways that she can use that one thing. So for example, the enrichment specialist brought in a whisk into the classroom and they asked the students, do you know what this whisk is? And the children said, yes, I see my parents cooking with it, scrambling eggs with it. And then she'd say, how else could we use this? Let's pretend it's not a whisk. And the kids are coming up with everything like robot arms and all different things that they're taught to build off each other's creativity and sort of come up with multiple types of answers. And so we're using those words, divergent thinking, convergent thinking, drawing conclusions. In fact, one of the first grade teachers said that she was doing a math lesson and they were talking about getting to an answer. And the student raised their hand, a first grader, a 6-year-old, and said, wait a second, you're asking us not to jump, to an answer. You're asking us to use everything we know and draw conclusions like Dudley, right? We're thinking like Dudley today. And she's like, yes, you are. You're thinking like Dudley. So it's great to see them be able to understand their thinking and the type of thinking. And as the enrichment specialist is conducting these lessons, the classroom teacher is observing, which is really great because she is looking for the types of thinking being done by her own class and sort of marking which children are really good at flexible thinking or which kids are really fluid with their ideas. And she's jotting notes down as the enrichment specialist is teaching. And it's been really interesting to talk with the first grade teachers and say, are the kids that are excelling with this program the kids that you see excelling in math or excelling in literacy? And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's children that just have this really higher level thinking that the teacher really doesn't notice in some of the academic areas. So it's really opening our teachers' eyes to the behaviors of gifted learners as well. So it's a great teaching opportunity with them being in the same classroom together to offer these activities. A letter goes home right before the teacher starts kind of explaining the program to parents. So the first grade parents all receive that letter home in backpacks. When we begin with kindergarten in the second trimester, kindergarten parents will receive an almost identical letter explaining the program for them. And then in the third trimester, we'll continue with our second graders, which will be really important because the enrichment specialists will get to know our second graders at the end of the school year so that we can prepare for the third grade pull-out program. In grades 3 through 5, we offer STEM push-in opportunities. So the class will attend a STEM lesson with our enrichment specialist. In third grade, they're really learning about the STEM process, learning about how to design something, how to test it out, what happens when it doesn't work. They're collaborating to solve a problem. This did not change. This was the STEM program that we offered in the past. The only difference is that we did expand it to grade 5 now as well. Grade 4 has an entire unit on surviving in the rainforest. The children in this picture are actually trying to keep their supplies dry in the rainforest, so they're building things and testing it out. Fourth grade goes through that rainforest unit. Then we also have a really strong science connection. In our science program in fourth grade, they study crayfish. And so one of the things that came out of that is they didn't get to do as much with the crayfish as they wanted to do. So in collaboration with our enrichment specialist, the enrichment specialist designed activities on prosthetics and designing prosthetics for their crayfish. So it's been a really nice collaboration with our science department as well. And in fifth grade, we are developing the new fifth grade curriculum, which is going to be a lot of design, roller coaster design, marble races, testing velocity, looking at how to stop the marble as it comes to the end, and building with all different materials. With a focus on that. And they'll also get into prosthetics too. I think we're in a fifth grade unit on building a prosthetic hand that can open and close. So really great things happening in these STEM opportunities, which are available for all of our students.
And another thing I just want to point out is that our students participate in STEM as part of the regular curriculum. It's part of what we do. This is an extension in the sense that it's not necessarily based on the content of what we're doing in math or the specific content of the standards in science. It takes more real-world application problems, something a little bit more fun and interesting, and they go into much more depth, and there's a stronger focus on the engineering design process that they might not get in the science class as it relates to the STEM projects. So type 2 services, again, this is when it's not whole class anymore. It goes down to many students. So we're going to talk about the details here. So in kindergarten through grade 5, we mentioned that our enrichment specialists collaborate with classroom teachers to make sure that we are providing the appropriate enrichment for our students. But what we heard last year from families was that they weren't even aware that some of this was happening. So we wanted to formalize this process. And so what we are doing is we have created a personalized education plan for students that are getting some of these more advanced and extensive differentiated instructional activities. So what will happen is our enrichment specialist might meet with the classroom teacher. It might be the math specialist along with the enrichment specialist, our reading specialist, a science specialist. But there will be the classroom teacher working with our other experts in the district to create this very brief, very simple plan for those children that are getting some more advanced activities. So you will get this usually around conference time or maybe even periodically throughout the year to let you know this is the area in the curriculum where your child really is showing strengths and where we really believe your child needs a little bit more. And so we will let you know what that area is, the reason why we believe that your child needs that help, and then we're going to let you know these are the activities that your child is working on in school in order to address those needs. And so hopefully that gives the parents a much clearer understanding of what is happening with your child. So you can see here we just quickly came up with a sample. We're working on numeration and place value. We use this ConnectEd data, which we get through our Everyday Math series, and he's showing 100% mastery in the standard. Obviously, this child knows it and maybe needs a little something extra. And so because of that, what's going to happen is John is going to get the math enrichment activities. During the digital game rotation, John's going to have more challenging game pieces. He's going to use base 10 blocks to create structures to determine their value. And you'll just see, and again, this is just an example, but you will get to see exactly what your child is doing in the classroom in order to expand his or her thinking. The other things that we talked about is the independent study. And again, we've had that for grades 4 and 5. That has not changed. Children can self-select and write a proposal about an area of interest, and they can become part of an independent study project in which they will work with the enrichment specialist once a week for a trimester, really researching and creating a project of their own choosing. And we have now expanded that to grade 3, so that's why that is new for this year. And now we're going to talk about some of the type 3 services where, again, this is where we identify students and we're, again, less students will be receiving the type 3 services.
So I talked about the PECS program and how the enrichment specialist is in the classroom along with the teacher. During that time, the child's developing sort of a portfolio of their thinking with the teacher sort of observing what's happening. And throughout that process, we will be identifying children that will be in need of a little bit more, which will be our Brain Flex group in K2 that will be pulled out of the classroom to work on some deeper, from the PECS program. It's actually the structure of the program to have an in-class model and a pull-out program. And so they'll go into a little more higher level thinking with that program. We're calling it Brain Flex just so it has a fun little name attached to it. But they will be identified through the PECS program so that we have that information along with some of our other observations and our behavioral checklists that the kindergarten, first, and second grade teachers will complete. Parents will be notified through a letter. It will require a signature so that you're aware that your child was selected for the program and will be participating in it. This is actually an example of our upper grade letter that goes home, but it will be very similar in nature to that letter. If you ever have questions about the identification after the letters go out, you are more than welcome to reach out to the enrichment specialist, and she'll be happy to go over the criteria specific to your child. And then in grades 3 through 5, we are now offering a literacy and math seminar to our third graders, which is new this year. So we've kind of expanded the program down to our third graders. And these children will be identified a little bit differently. We'll go into that in a little bit. The criteria for this is different because we're offering math-specific and literacy-specific seminars to these students. Seminars are 70 minutes in length, so it's almost a double class period for them once a week where they're pulled out and they meet with the enrichment specialist. It'll be a trimester of literacy, and then the next trimester would be math. Some students are in one, some students are in both. It all depends on that criteria. And they're meeting with peers that have similar strengths, and so they're able to really dive deep into novel studies and looking at social issues and things like that, communicating with peers that are on their level throughout their grade level. And in the math seminar, they're just the other day I was watching Mrs. Yar do a lot of variable work and expressions and algebra, things that they really wouldn't see in their 5th grade classroom or in that curriculum. So she's able to take them further within the math program.
And finally, we'll talk about the Type 4 services, and this is for very few students. So these opportunities, there's really no specific format because this is on such an individual basis. So when we get a child where Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3 don't seem to be addressing their needs well enough, we then work individually with that student, that family, and our specialists, and we will come up with some type of a specialized program for that child. It could be a dual enrollment program or something along those lines. So this is the schedule for this year if you wanted to just take a peek, so you could see when students in particular grades are getting the various types of supports. So we're in trimester 1, so it's a push-in for grade 1, that's the pecs program. Grade 3 and 4 are getting the whole class instruction in STEM. We've started our 5th grade seminar in math. Our 5th graders are going through the Word Masters process, which is that vocabulary and analogy building competition that they participate in, and our 5th graders are also participating in the independent study. And then you can see trimester 2 and 3. This schedule and this presentation will be online for you to be able to see, and much of this information is already online if you go to the brief section of the website. It's part of the Prezi. We've also pulled some of that information out of the Prezi so you don't have to look at the whole thing, try and find it. We've tried to put some of this really important highlighted material right on the website for you to see. So let's talk about the eligibility criteria. This is Dee touched on it a little bit. We use multiple measures. We always have. It's very important that you don't use just one type of measure or piece of data to determine eligibility for any kind of a program. So for grades K to 2, we look at classroom assessments to see how are the children doing in the classroom. We look at the behavioral scales, which are new this year. We've talked about those when we met in the spring. And then those observations that take place during the PECS program. Again, the beauty of the program is you have the classroom teacher and the enrichment specialist in the classroom working with the children for approximately 10 weeks. Being able to observe them, observe their thinking, see how they're performing, and we have lots of anecdotal notes that help us to determine if the children seem to really be advanced in that area and can benefit from being in a continued pull-out program. So those are the various data points that we use to identify the children for the BrainFlex portion of the program. We take some of those and we expand on it for grades 3, 4, and 5. We have more standardized assessment data once we get into the upper grades. So we use the COGAT screener, which was new last year. And it's a 25-minute screener. It's not very long. And what we do is we then use that information to help as one of our data points in our eligibility that will be given to second graders at the end of the year moving forward. We did it with some fourth grade in the past because we needed that data in order to determine eligibility since we just changed the program. We use CTP 5 scores. And again, we look at reading and we look at math and we look at those separately. So again, if we have an accelerated reading program, we're using the reading data. We're not going to put math data in there because again, remember, sometimes students show strengths in particular areas. So we separate that out on our matrix. Same thing with NJSLA scores, formerly known as PARC. We use data there as well. We look at literacy, we look at math data points. We look at performance in the classroom and how they do on a daily basis, and we look at those behavioral scales. We take all this data and we put it on a matrix, and we look to see where the students fall on that matrix. They must meet a criteria or a cutoff point, and then they would become eligible for the program. And I'm going to let Mrs. D talk to you a little bit more specifically about that, and we're going to show you a sample of what that matrix looks like.
And both the COGAT and the CTP5 have a parent report that we do send home to parents as soon as those reports are available to us. So you will get that information. This was the first year that third grade took the CTP5. Years ago they used to, but since we extended the program down to third grade, we did assess them with the CTP5 in September. So third grade parents will receive that information. So this is a school's data that we've put onto this eligibility matrix. And obviously we removed student names, but you can see all of the various data points that we use. As Dr. Lacatina said, it's not just one data point. We use the COGAT standard age score, which is relative to an IQ score, so 100 is considered average. The cognitive abilities test, they tell us to look at students above 135. We use the COGAT verbal analogies. We feel that this is the literacy seminar matrix. This is not the math. I'm showing you the literacy right now. We use the COGAT verbal analogy score to just tease out that piece from the COGAT. We look at their NJSLA in English language arts. We look at the verbal reasoning on the CTP5, the reading comprehension, and those are percentiles. So we're looking for students in that 97, 98, 99 percentile for our programs. We look at classroom assessments and the behavioral skills that were completed by the teachers. All of those have a point values. I've removed those from this because we don't publish our eligibility criteria for the public. But when you call the enrichment specialist, if you're wondering about eligibility, this is what she will share with you. She will share where they performed in each of these areas. And when we lay it out this way, we look across all of the points, we rank them. They've been ranked here for you to sort of see. The enrichment specialists do a really beautiful job of sort of looking for outliers. Like this kid down here was in the 92nd percentile for reading comprehension. He has really strong reading comprehension. Is there any other areas? Is there something else we're missing? So we're looking across each individual student, not just those top kids, to make sure that we're not missing someone. They could have had a bad day. They're children. They could have had a bad test day. They could have been sick. Their goldfish could have passed away the day before NJSLA and all of that. So we don't look at just one data point. And so this gives us the criteria, the eligibility points. We set a cutoff and we look and we identify those students. We use local norms. The more local you get, the better to identify our students. So we're constantly, the COGAT sends us a published report each year of how our students perform locally, which is really helpful. And as you can see, we look for more than just 1% of our students. We're really trying to give opportunities to more than just that top 1%. I don't know the exact percentage of students in our programs, but I would say it's definitely above 15% that receive that pull-out.
I believe it is at least above 15% in the elementary schools. I do know that when we start pulling out for math, when we go to the middle school, we've got about 33% of our students that go into an advanced math class at the middle school level. And we do use a very similar matrix where you can really see all of the data points and see where they fall. And we typically will highlight, where students do well. We're going to take questions at the end. And so we always take a look at that, and there's a lot of time that goes into this process. I can tell you that I get involved at my level, that I take a look at those matrices with our math specialists. Every year they come to me and we look at it, and we really take the time to try to give as many students opportunities as possible. And we will sometimes get parents involved with this, what are you thinking? Your child is on the cusp. What do you think is good for your child? And we ask for their input when we're just really not sure. And so same thing at this level. The enrichment specialists meet with the principals and talk about data, talk to teachers, and make sure that, again, it's not that here's our cutoff, but we also take a deeper look. And it's not always that cut and dry with those cuspy kinds of scores.
This is an example of a performance report that a parent will receive upon completion of either the literacy seminar or the math seminar. We will also have one for that Brain Flex K2 group so that the parent is receiving sort of like a report card upon completion of the program. You'll notice these work habits and the participation really reflect gifted behaviors. So we use Renzulli's behavioral characteristics of gifted learners. And so when we're identifying those students, we look at those characteristics. So why not reflect on what those characteristics look like now in a setting where they're with like peers, because it could be different. So parents will be receiving this at the end of each trimester that their child participated in the programs. Professional development, we continue to be continues to be ongoing. We are sending our teachers, our administrators to all different various types of professional development. Characteristics of accelerated learners was presented to our teachers in the spring of 2019, so they really get a sense to understand what that looks like in the classroom in front of them. We are doing a book study with the enrichment specialists on teaching gifted kids in today's classrooms. We chose that book because we really want our enrichment specialists to help empower our teachers to become teachers of gifted learners. And so by giving them those tools through this book study, we hope that they spend the majority of their day with the classroom teacher. We're hoping that those tools will be utilized when they're in the general education classroom. We have grade level meetings throughout this year where the enrichment specialists and the principals are meeting with grade levels to discuss how we're enriching our learners. Our enrichment specialists, all 4 of them, are attending the Rutgers Gifted Education Conference in November. And Dr. Lactina and I are attending the National Association of Gifted Children Conference next week. We're really excited about that. It's in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So thank you to the district for supporting us with that work. So we're excited to bring back even more learning opportunities.
And there is a full day. The first day is a full day on Twice Exceptional, because that came up last year as another topic of conversation, not just from you. I hope you don't mind that. I'm pointing that out. But we've had some other questions as well. And so we were so excited when we looked at the schedule that very first day, I think it's 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. A whole day workshop is devoted
Last
to
year
Twice
you were in
Exceptional.
Minneapolis, and that's when we got the snowstorm here.
Right. Yes.
They had warmer weather in Minneapolis when we got the ice storm in November.
No one could get home from work that day.
Right, and we were fine. Minneapolis, go figure. So we're excited to be able to, that was really a focus of this conference, so to have that availability, to have a full day on it is really exciting for us, and that's something we really hope to learn a lot about. And so now we're going to open it up to questions. So thank you again very much for coming, and we appreciate any of your thoughts. Yes?
My name is Alana. My kids go to Radburn. My oldest is in 4th grade, so he'll be going to middle school next year for 5th grade. So with all of this that you're saying is going up to 5th grade, will you be following them to the middle school next year?
So that's something we are still working on. That's a discussion of what we're going to do with the 5th grade program next year.
Okay.
And how that's going to work.
And another question about this is the individualized study for the 3rd to 5th that you were
Right.
talking about. Friends of ours who have done that for the 4th and 5th, they say that a good portion of it is take-home work, whereas we have no problem challenging him at home. We let him read the books, and we're going to museums, and I'd rather that he's outside and with his friends after school. Could you consider making more of a portion during the day, since he's spending so much time at school, sometimes bored? Would that be something that you're considering?
Well, we have that personal students or helping support students that might be struggling, that is what that piece is for. And depending upon the individual student, they might be in the classroom for that 1 day a week or all 5 days. That's also a time where we might do instrumental music and the child might come out. It might be time for speech or other services like that.
Yes,
But
it-
it's a great, I mean, that's something that would be a great time to use.
The personalized learning module, we did not have that 2 years ago.
No.
Last year was our first year, and it was called the extended learning period. This year, we want to tie it more towards our strategic plan goal and our district goals and make it more personalized, hence the reason why you're all here, to make it a more meaningful time for the students, because everybody's needs are so different throughout the whole district, so we thought that would be a great opportunity to personalize it more to the child's needs.
Sorry, I just want to write that down.
I can also speak to the enrichment specialist because they meet with your child during their independent study period during the week and maybe work on some sort of schedule, like when can you get this done during class, what time do you have available, so that they can devise their own plan for the time that they're going to use with school to get the plan done, so they're not bringing it all home.
And when will the planning for next year take place for the 5th graders next year?
It's ongoing. When are we planning that? We're in conversation with that now. So when we talked about the new middle school schedule and what that looks like, that will be a part of it. Hopefully in the next couple of months.
Is it possible to find out when the dates are for each trimester?
It's the report card calendar, so is that on the district
It should be on the district calendar, but we can go in and add it to that chart.
Maybe just where it says trimester 1, put the dates.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can go in here and add those dates there. I know we're coming up to the end of the first trimester.
I also have another question. So, if eligibility comes home in a letter, how would you sort of know, like, if you get no letter, by what point? You know what I mean? Like,
You don't have it the week before the new trimester starts. So it usually goes out 1 to maybe 2 weeks before the trimester begins.
I have one more question, I'm sorry.
Sure. That's okay.
When it comes to the matrix, are certain things weighted more than others, or does everything get equal weight?
We typically weight things differently. So there could be things that are weighted differently.
Is there any way of finding out what that is, or?
Those are some of the pieces that we don't necessarily put up there. So probably not. If you have a conversation, again, an individual conversation with the enrichment specialist, they'll let you know where the strengths things will be weighted differently. But again, I say that, but we also, again, we're not going to say, the number is 20 and here's a child with a 19. So we're not even going to look at that child. We will look at that child's scores at 19 and look across. And so, you might see 4 out of 5 things are really high, and this 5th thing is not, but so close. So we want to give that child an opportunity when we talk to the parent or talk to the teacher and talk to the student. The student is motivated. So if a student's not motivated, you might not then, push forward. But we have our matrix, we have that cutoff, but we always look at that next band to say, are we capturing the child properly? Is there something we're missing? As Mrs. D was saying, was there, looking across the test, was there something that seemed to be a little bit more troublesome for that child, and was there a reason for it? Sometimes we'll go back to former years. We've done that before, where if we have a 5th grader and something looks kind of out of, not the same as the rest of the scores, we'll go back to the prior year and say, how'd the child do then? It's not part of the matrix, but it doesn't mean we don't go back and look at it anyway. Again, when we have a district with 33% of our students taking advanced math, I think that shows we're trying to push our students forward. I think I've talked about this at the high school. We have this new waiver process in place for students that want to get into certain courses that don't necessarily meet the prerequisites, and they get to apply for this waiver, and they get to say, like, hey, let me tell you why I really want to be in this course, and I want to appeal to be able to be in it. So trying to give students that voice. In our math program, like I said, those students that just sort of missed the cutoff. We've been making phone calls to parents and saying, what do you think? You know, your child is right on the edge, and I'm going to tell you, half the time the parents say, absolutely put my child in, and half the time parents say, I don't think that's for my child, and no, thank you, but, and so again, you know, parents know their children as well, so, you know, we've definitely been moving in that direction to try to, here's our cutoff, but now let's really try to make sure that we're not missing something. I hope that helps.
And there's been some times where we've been in meetings and the parents like, put my child in, and the kid's like, no, I don't want to go into that class. And it gets very awkward sometimes. Or reading is their strong subject. I hate reading. We've been there.
Thank you.
Can you give an example of what a type 4 program might look like, or what dual enrollment where?
So we sometimes have children that are in, they might take a portion of their subjects in a grade level ahead. So they're in, not really two different grade levels, but for a portion of the day, the child might be taking some kind of courses or some kind of class in a grade level ahead. Dual enrollment is more like the high school, where we have kids in Bergen County Community College. So sometimes that information just funnels down into the classroom, and it's not necessarily the child sitting in a classroom that's a grade level above, because that's not always right for certain children. But we have kids that are getting work that is much more advanced than what they're learning in the classroom. So it could be something like that. It really depends. It doesn't happen that often.
Sure.
And when it does happen, I mean, it is so individualized. Like I say, Dr. Arkina does a great job. But like, we'll sit there, we'll bat that decision around. Sometimes it could take us 50 hours because you're bringing so many different people into it to look at it and say, how can we individualize this? Where can they go? You're thinking outside the box so much for that individualized child to personalize it for them, and it could be very difficult. But because it's so rare to see a schedule like that. That's not the norm, for lack of a better word. But it's fun. It's fun to really try to play with that individualized child.
And I often say, I wish I had a crystal ball, because it's really hard because these children are so young. So you're saying, socially and emotionally, should they be with kids 1 to 2 or 3 years older when their brain is thinking 3 years older? Should the 6-year-old be with the 9-year-olds? Is that what's best for the child? And there's no straight answer. There's no one answer to any of this. It's really so highly individualized. And if we polled everybody here, half of you would say, my child would be fine going a grade or 2 ahead. And there might be parents that would say, oh, I'm not so sure that that's good for my child, but I still want them enriched academically. So we're always walking that fine line between how do we enrich them academically and still support them with their developmental needs, because not every child would feel comfortable or safe or secure or confident in a classroom with students that are older. Some will, absolutely, but not all. So those are the very highly individualized things that we have to discuss with families and the educators in the district and try to figure out what it is that we should be doing. And it's not, and it's not always a definitive answer. We try things. Sometimes it doesn't work. So we have to come back to the drawing board and try again. So it's not always that we're correct the first time around. And we have to really monitor those situations and then revisit and say, this is not working for this child. What can we do?
And you're also saying that type 1, type 2, type 3 does not meet that child's needs. So you need the evidence that there's absolutely, the classroom is not meeting that child's needs. And getting that evidence is sometimes tricky. What is the benefit of?
How do you define meeting the child's needs? That's the other thing, right? The parent might have one perception of it. Like you said, the child might have another perception, the teacher has another perception of it, right?
You have to use a lot of data. I mean, that's what you can see how many data points are there just for a full-out program.
A lot of common. That's why I was saying it could take up to like 50 hours, and I mean that. Like it could be speaking with every administrator they went to schooling with, all the teachers they spoke with, all the teachers they may have had, interviews with the child. Just how do you feel about reading? How do you feel? And just sample, maybe sitting through a class, seeing how they do. Back to that social piece. The one thing you don't want to do is push a child and then you have the counter effect of the social emotional piece, because we don't, you don't want to take on that. So it's just, there's so many different variables that you throw at it to make sure that you're doing the right thing for that child, to personalize it for them. Because it could, like I said, the one thing you don't want to do is set a child up for failure where maybe they go into it and then they struggle, and then maybe you take 5 steps back. So it's trial and error. And like I said, it's a lot of all the data points, as Ms. D was talking to. There's just so many variables that go into it. You try to make the best decision possible with the data you have, with the conversations that you have. And it's just, the one thing I can say, it's not a rushed process. And a lot of times, a lot of the conversation, oh, I think my son-in-law should go into this class or go into this program, and you're not moving quick enough. And not that anybody's ever saying that, but it's just, you have to take your time with these decisions because there's so much more to them, especially when you get to that tier 4 type student.
And sometimes we also, you don't just look at report card grades. So we'll often, and again, it's much easier at the middle and high school level because you have the portal with all the grade book stuff. So I'm going to speak just to a middle school level for a moment. Sometimes when we look at those students, we will go in and look at their scores. How do they do on homework compared to projects, compared to tests? Because that sometimes also teases out the strengths of a student. Like, okay, so that student got a C. But when you look at the individual grades, the child aced every test. The child didn't really want to do homework, or the child didn't hand in a project. But while the child is acing those tests, that's a different story. That tells me something different than if the child got hundreds because he handed in homework, not graded the homework, but handed it in and did poorly on the assessments. So we sometimes have to look at the data that way too, because we can say, I might be saying, well, your child got a C, he doesn't belong in that class. But when I look further into the data, I might have to change my mind based on what it tells me. Or, so those are the kinds of things. We might give an additional type of an assessment to a child. So it really sort of depends on the individual student, and we have to look again at all of those different areas.
I have a question about the tier 3 pullouts. So those are, that could be multiple students from a class. Is it mixed across grade levels? What does that look like?
So the grades 3 through 5 ones they're with their own grade level. The K2 one we have a little more flexibility with, so we might take K1 students together that have similar profiles. We might take 1 or 2 students together, depending on the timing. So we really try to make it during our personalized learning block too, so that they're part of the rest of the classroom. So a lot of times we will take just the grade level combined.
And just in the different schools, the elementary schools, is there a dedicated classroom for this, or what is? I'm just curious, just to know what the child's experience is across the different schools.
Yes, so they have to have their own space because they are pulling the children out of the room.
Okay.
So all of our enrichment specialists have their own dedicated space. It might be a shared space,
Okay.
but they're taking them to their room.
It might be a media center, I think, in
Some of them use the
instances,
media
on
center.
certain days, depending upon the
At
event.
Lake Crest, it's in the trailer. We have classrooms out, the portable classrooms. So they go there.
Mills were using the outside of the media center, correct?
It's like that section.
There is that
partition.
separate.
I don't know if you remember any Mills parents in here.
Yes.
Last year, there was the nurse's office, and then across the hall there was like some extra storage on the outside of it was like the nurse's other section.
The annex.
The annex, whatever you want to call it, this summer. We walked around and said this would be a great opportunity to take that area, because it's right on the outside of the media center, and make that the little area where Breach could get pulled out to. We thought it would be very conducive because it was close to the media center.
So kind of related to that, the seminars you said are 70 minutes, so 70 minutes once per week for the whole trimester? Yes?
Yes.
And they'll miss the same thing, or?
They're taking them, if it's a literacy seminar, they're missing their literacy block for 1 day a week. If it's a math seminar, they're missing their math period for the week.
But they're still responsible for everything that's happening in the classroom?
They are, but if they've demonstrated mastery with
Of
something,
course,
then,
but I'm just saying,
yeah,
it's in addition. It's
correct.
truly
Yep.
enrichment.
going back to the topic of social emotional and how finding the sort of perfect place for gifted kids in terms of their social development. Are there any plans to have a pull-out gifted class? Maybe it's once a week, or maybe just permanent one class where all the gifted kids are, so that they have their own pace of learning. They have deeper understanding, deeper instruction level, so that they just have a different approach to them on a regular basis.
At this point, no. This is the model that we have right now that we just had spent this past year working on. So at this point, we don't have any plans to do a separate, it sounds like you're saying a separate program. We believe really strongly that the students need to be part of their peer group as much as possible and be part of, the other things that are happening in the classrooms. So at this point, no. I can't speak for down the road, but right now that is not the model that we are following. This is really a very strongly supported model. We went to the national conference. It came up over and over and over again to do this type of a tiered model for students. I know in the past I was aware of a couple of school districts that had a separate program like that where they pulled kids from across the town and put them into one class, and most of those have been disbanded now and they've gone to different kinds of models. Again, I don't know why, but I know that that's not what those towns that I was aware of are doing anymore. But we do try to find what was sort of best practices across the country, and this again spoke to us and came up over and over again.
Okay. So you said that you are identifying approximately 50% of students to give enrichment to. How do you?
In the past it has been. I don't know this year yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So how do you differentiate to the top 1% or less than 1%? Because they need further.
That would be that type 4 that we were talking about. That is really highly individualized, and so I can't tell you what that program would look like. I could tell you we would look at the data that we had, and we would have to see the needs of the child, and then figure out what we believe to be best. So again, sometimes in the past, some students very rarely have accelerated a grade level. They've gone in for a subject, or again, that material has filtered down to them while they stayed in the classroom. It could be a variety of things, but it really depends on the individual student. So I can't give you an exact program because it's so special at that point that we really have to do an individualized program.
Do you have an example, without names or without a subject, but a good example of a child and what steps were done so that the child felt that his needs are met, and then the parents felt that, and the teachers were also content that everyone was.
Again, I'm just going to reiterate what I said, that we've had, sometimes parents have brought us testing, sometimes we've had our own testing. We have all the data from everything that we've shown you here. We have the conversations like Mr. Garcia was saying, and again, I'm just going to reiterate the programs. Like I said, we've had some kids that have advanced in a grade level, some kids that have advanced in a class, some kids that are just in these programs plus some additional support within the classroom. Those are really the things that have happened most often for children. And so I'm not sure how else to answer that question for you.
Okay. Do you recommend when you go through the identification process, do you recommend private testing to some of the kids that you think would benefit from?
We do not recommend private testing. No, that would be something a parent would choose to do. We don't recommend that. We come up with the data that we have and we use that to make our decisions. So we don't often, I don't think we've ever told a parent to go and test their child.
Two questions. You said they get a note sent home like right before the trimester. If a child self-selects, is it, like, how would they know when to do that?
So the self-select programs, the enrichment specialist pushes into the classroom. Most of the time she'll do a lesson, like for Word Masters. She offers a Word Masters lesson just to give them a taste of what that program looks like so that the children can make a decision. Is this something that interests me? Is this something that I enjoy doing? And then there is a letter that the child will take home to share stating that they've decided to, they fill it out.
But they would say to the kids, you guys can pick this if you want.
Correct. Yep, the same with independent study.
So, and then that would be, so you said a lot of these programs happen during the personalized learning module?
Some, as much
Well,
as we
except
can.
for if you're pulled out for literacy or
Right,
not.
right, as much as we can.
Okay, but if a child also needs support services that
We'll work
happen
all
during that
around
time?
that. Yes, we'll work around.
It wouldn't preclude that.
So, is there any way that we can get more information from teachers as to what's going on in the personalized learning? Because last year I know it was a little different. It was all something a little different, but it was unclear because I get like, we're getting like a lot of homework sheets and coming back with what was happening when. So that, yeah.
You can certainly call the classroom teacher or email the classroom teacher and she can, or he can fill you in on
I'm
what's
just wondering, like,
happening.
district-wide, if it can be something that's all the teachers know to do, so that not all of us are like, okay, you're like emailing every single teacher, so that.
Well, because I think that's really hard to put out a blanket statement that's going to give you the details that you're looking for. So we use that time for pulling students out of the classroom to go to perhaps ELL, resource room, speech, instrumental music, reach, what else am I missing? OT, PT, so it could be that. It could be intervention math, it could be intervention
Right, but
literacy.
the work that's coming home is not being identified, so I would see a worksheet, I have no idea where it came from or what it was
So
for.
you just want to know if it was done during the
exactly.
regular class or during,
Yeah, like
is
just-
that, well, very funny. We were actually talking this year, we were trying to see if we can get personalized little stampers for every teacher.
I love
We were costing it out, and because we were thinking if they can just put a quick stamp at the top of the page that says enrichment,
Right.
right, or
That's sort of what we were
personalized
planning,
learning.
because we want them to spend their
Yes.
time sort of coming up with
Of
these
course.
activities, and, you know, if they have the extra added pressure of then, okay, I need to tell the parent that I'm doing this with them, we want it to be so flexible in design. I mean, my teachers, sometimes they're done with a math lesson at 11:15, and during their lunch hour, they're figuring out, what am I going to do this afternoon for personalized learning, because I had these kids doing this in math, and I really want to enrich them, and they're finding something at lunch, so it's so flexible,
So-
and
So if it's
That was-
identification purposes,
That
that's
sounds like-
easier for us to do. We haven't
Yes,
talked about
that's
that
what-
yet.
Yeah.
It sounds like a great idea. They were hinting to me at that I would give them approval to buy stamps.
we do know how much money we need.
That's
we can
fine.
save that.
Just, this is on video, so now we have to go to the business.
You can ask her now.
Yeah,
Get Brooke
no
on the
problem.
phone.
I won't be here tonight, so yeah, it's fine. It's fine for the morning session.
Yeah, that's sort of
Um,
more what I meant, just
we'll
to
get
be
Brooke
able
on the
to-
phone.
to tell
Exactly.
what's what. That's
Right, right.
And
Well-
the same way a teacher would identify if this child needed support with this
Yes.
on it, I did this with your child.
I think that's a great strategy. However, you need to have ongoing communication. So, you know, what may work for your son or daughter and what they may be doing in Reach may be vastly different than somebody else's son or daughter, just because as you go through the tiers, it's so individualized. So what work may be coming home for you may be different than somebody on this side of the room here. So that's why I think it's so important that you have that dialogue and that communication and keep those lines of communication open with the teacher and or the building principal. So I think it's important to continue to have those dialogues, those conversations about hey, what's going on there, and not just by looking. I think the stamp is a great idea, but I think it's important for you to keep communicating.
And also that PEP, that personalized education plan, will hopefully clarify a little bit more for parents. You're going to see some stuff coming home focused on these subjects and activities. But again, maybe we can put a key at the top of that paper because it's connected to that personalized education plan. So now I understand what you're asking. Okay. Yes.
I'll just give our own example because I think maybe other people are in the same boat. But just building on what you were talking about, I think the parent communication is a big aspect of it. For example, my son has had speech since kindergarten. They've decided that he needed it, and he's gone every week since kindergarten. And the speech teacher finds me. She calls me. I get stuff sent home. I send it back. And I think that would be great for REACH as well, because I feel, and the teachers have even said to me, that he's in need of more enrichment in literacy and math. But I keep hitting a brick wall with it, because they would say, well, we are differentiating. We put him with the other strong readers, but he's needed more. And so I think that there could have been more parent communication from like, seems like maybe you're moving towards that, but sort of in the same model as with the other special services that are in the schools.
That's sorry, just want to jump, former special ed guy, 20 plus years, and that's exactly where the PEC came from. I mean, we talked about, having the IEP and how individualized it was, and saying, like, what can we do? Because once again, could be the other end of the, now we're looking at the other end of the individualized education here with, REACH. And it's like, what can we do for parents so they know that their education plan, hence the PEC, the personalized education plan for REACH, that's kind of where that all came from. So we're hoping to go towards that.
And how is the PEP different than the IEP?
IEP is mandated by federal law, Individual with Disabilities Education Act, where this isn't. So this is not something that now there's talks, legislative talks about gifted and where they could be going with that. We all know how quick the Department of Education works. Turn the video off for that, but we know how quick they work. But we wanted to do something with Fair Law. We heard everybody's concerns, or just what could we do to give REACH a shot in the arm in Fair Law. And this was something, they did a great job by going to the conference and bringing all this back and saying, this is what we think could work here in Fair Lawn. So we said, we know that helps the special education population. And we thought, that's so individualized, what could help here? And that's where the PEP came from. So we don't have to do a PEP, you have to do an IEP. But we thought it would be best practice to go to a model like that.
Mm-hmm. And another piece that we did talk about last year, I believe, but I want to just reemphasize again here. We were, again, thank you, Board of Education, we were able to hire another enrichment specialist. So because we were able to do that, we have time that is built into one of the teacher schedules to do the collaboration with the teachers. So again, in those efforts to collaborate more with our staff, to give the teachers who are saying sometimes, I'm not sure what else to do. And so to be able to provide time within the school day for the enrichment specialist to talk to the teachers and create those plans. So I like you're saying, we are moving towards that direction of trying to improve that communication with parents. I think this is a step, and this is also a step towards supporting the teachers in the classroom. We talked about that last year about, it's not just about the enrichment specialists understanding how to work with gifted learners. It's really the classroom teachers understanding what to do. And so the professional development piece, getting our teachers in the habit of picking up that phone and calling our enrichment specialists and saying, okay, I did A, B, and C. My child needs more, or my student needs more. Can you please come and consult with me, finding a time for them to meet, to say, well, show me what you did. Here are some more resources. Let's try this. And writing it up so that you, the parent, knows that it took place. The teacher feels supported as well, and hopefully moving, more and more in that direction, being able to support teachers and communicate better with families. It's a lot. It is a lot. I would say that we're, differentiating for many, many of our students on both ends of the spectrum. And it's much clearer in an IEP. And so we're trying to, we didn't call it an individualized education plan for that reason, because that is a very different document. So that's why it's a personalized education plan. So, but again, all these suggestions and ideas are really good. A lot of this stuff has come out of the conversations that we've had with the families.
This is just
thank you.
An overall goal of the district. One of our district-wide goals this year was about personalized learning. One of our strategic plan goals is personalized learning. I mean, you keep hearing that word over and over again because we just know nowadays that everybody learns so differently and everybody has such individual needs. So I mean, we're constantly, when you look at secondary level, any high school parents in here? Couple. I mean, you saw what we just did with Bergen Community College. We have 14 students going there to start earning their associate's degree starting at junior year. I mean, they're starting a junior year to go there in the morning. They spend the half day at the Primus campus taking classes, and by the time they graduate senior year, they will have 60 college credits and an associate's degree under their belt because that's personalized to them and what their needs are. What other students go to Bergen Tech? We're constantly talking to them with how can we improve more CTE programs here in Fairlawn. We're trying to do everything we can when you get that level to personalize it and individualize it to what their needs can possibly be. So I mean, you're going to keep hearing more and more about it because it's the right thing to do. I was only supposed to sit in the back and drink coffee. So.
Okay. Yes.
Question about instrumental music. What grade have you started? What instruments are?
Fourth grade, and I don't know the names.
I don't think there's any. Yeah.
Is it possible to expand the program or just?
Right now, there are no conversations about that. Again, they'll hire more teachers. Right now, it's in fourth and fifth. We have to talk about. Yes, I'm sorry. I saw your hand intermittently.
That was actually stretching me.
Oh, okay.
I just have two quick questions. I have a first grader, and I remember the schedule correctly. There's push-in first grade, first trimester, and then there's nothing in the second trimester, and nothing really happens with first graders until the third trimester? Is that well, so they get the push-in pets program in the first trimester, and the pull-out for that program will be in the third trimester. However, having the information that the teacher and the enrichment specialist have worked together on in that first trimester, the teacher and the enrichment specialist will continue to support that child throughout the second trimester.
And the parents find out at the end of the first trimester if their kid's been identified?
I think we'll identify right before the third trimester, just in case we have new students moving in, or we see changes in behavior, or we see some things that really, we want to get them right before, so we make sure we're identifying everyone.
And I understand this touches on the social emotional piece. I understand that reaches. I want to say thank you first of all. I think this is great. I appreciate all the work and the focus and the support for the program. So thank you for that. Is there any social thinking skills piece or component? Because some of these kids, they're so bright. Sometimes they're misunderstood. Sometimes they're misjudged. Sometimes socially they struggle. Because, they might be so bright academically in certain areas and have certain competencies, but then...
It's a really, really good point.
Yeah, so I think that's where our Stanford Harmony curriculum comes into play. Our K-5 teachers are utilizing that curriculum to really teach social skills whole class. And so we do our meetups and our buddy ups, and we're teaching children how to talk and communicate in really fun, creative ways. And then we also have Care Plus, who also supports children with social skills groups and things like that. So we're always looking to strengthen our students' social skills, and I think hitting it from both of those ends is really important.
And sometimes what I find so interesting is having conversations with parents, and I'm talking about a child, and you're talking about the same child, but it seems like we are talking about very different kids because we don't always see in school what parents see at home. So sometimes you'll have the school concerned about something that the parent's not concerned about, or vice versa. So I would encourage all parents, if you're seeing something at home that we're not seeing, please talk to us. We're so excited to have the partnership with Care Plus, and we have our child study team members that are available to speak with our children. Because you're right, there is this big disconnect. So going back to that conversation earlier, we have kids that academically can sit 4 years ahead, but socially and emotionally they're not there. And that is a hard struggle for a kid. Kids still want to be kids at heart and still want to play with blocks, but they're doing, trigonometry or something. And so finding that balance and trying to find ways to support that is critical. So if you ever see that, please call us. The second piece that I want to share with you, I don't know if anybody has kindergarten students. So this year we have started, we sort of as like a little kindergarten boot camp. We were hoping to do something over the summer to support our incoming kindergartners, but didn't really know if we would capture all of the kids in the summertime. So we are doing, I think it's a 6-week program right now with Care Plus, going into every kindergarten classroom, talking to our students to help transition them into school, to talk about positive social behaviors, talking about learning behaviors that will help them be successful, conflict resolution. This is how you can make a friend. This is what you do if maybe a friend hurts your feelings. So some of those kind of skills we found a need to teach with every student. And so we're starting that this year in kindergarten, and we'll see how that goes. But it's something that we felt like would be a good use of our clinicians and taking that time to work with every kid, just equip them with the skills they need, because it is beyond the academics. There are so many other pieces, and for these children that are really gifted, you often can see, some of those behaviors they've exasperated, but they are struggling with some of those pieces. So thank you for bringing that up.
I mean, I hope that hopefully carries over to all the, I think, social skills. I mean, they say a predictor of success later in life is the social piece is the most important, being able to get along with others and being able to have conflict resolution issues, or he just doesn't see it. He comes home and you hear about this, person that might be a sweet little girl, painted as an evil. Oh, she did that. She said my picture was, and he's so upset. And I'm like, I'm thinking that's what he's mad at. That's what he's not getting it. We try to.
And it's teaching kids how to cope with those kinds of things, and how to identify their feelings, how to express those feelings. So there's a lot involved there. And while the meetup buddy ups might sound so simple, it really is helpful when you see it in action and you see what's taking place in the classrooms, the topics the students are talking about, and the conversations they're having with one another. And oftentimes it's with somebody who might not necessarily choose to be their friend to hang out with. So they're learning to have conversations and get along with people that they might not normally choose as their best friend. So that's all helpful stuff as well. But
Thank you.
Just quick, so, will you do a forum like this when you actually outline middle school, specifically 5th grade?
I anticipate a much larger forum than this when we outline 5th grade. I would anticipate we're not going to fit in a room this small, but yes, it will be the same type of thing where we will offer multiple opportunities for parents to come. I'm speaking for Mr. Garcia, but I think
like within, sort of in the new year, it has to be, right? I told you I don't get.
It's going to be, we're open after the holidays.
Okay.
And
you'll integrate this into that.
January, February, March, April, May, those are all after the I just reiterated.
I was going to say January 3rd.
I know when placement starts, so it's like, this is going to be here tomorrow.
We are working on it every day and every week, and we have a 5 through 8 configuration team that meets. We're meeting again this Friday. We make sure that team meets on a bi-weekly basis, but we're still meeting on a daily basis to talk about it. So there's so many pieces to the puzzle. We're very happy with the progress we're making. I mean, great progress. This has been easy, probably 2 years in working, but we're shooting for hopefully after the holidays that we can have our first public. This is what we think it's going. This is what it's going to look like. And like this, informational nights and sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's huge. And every time you answer a question, there's more questions. And even this piece, by the end, by the end of 4th grade,
Well, and part of that, quite honestly, is why 5th grade didn't really change this year. Because we didn't know where it was going the following year, so to change it tremendously for 1 year and maybe have it change all over again, we didn't change it drastically for 5th grade. 5th grade stayed relatively the same, and that is a question that we need to answer. How do we support our struggling students in 5th grade? There are lots and lots of things that we keep tackling at these meetings, and as you said, there are going to be more questions. We'll probably present and somebody's gonna say, well, what about this, or what about that, and there's a lot to consider.
Right, so, yeah.
And we are working on it,
Oh, I believe.
Yeah, feverishly.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else with any other questions?
You know, this year, actually, before you, so, when we talk about sample harmony and social emotional, we also did the Sandy Promise Started Below
Yeah.
this year at
Oh, yeah.
elementary schools as well, which is awesome. Everything we can do to try to, you know, foster that well-being, mindfulness, social emotional, we're trying. We really are. It's a big push for us. It's a big push for every district, and rightfully so.
We thank you again for coming. If you have any other questions that you think of when you leave, you know, you can always reach out to either one of us. This will be posted online